I was not concerned with just doing films ever because I thought they were going to be a hit. I've conducted my career mostly by doing parts that I wanted to do. I saw a way to play it that excited me. Jack Lemmon, the actor. The films that I am most proud of, very often in the past, had been films that nobody wanted to do.
Hello, I'm Gordon Hunt, and this is Starring the Actors, where some of your favorite performers tell you how they do what they do best, act. Jack Lemmon is an amazing actor. His work goes from comedy to drama and back again, sometimes in the same picture. In Some Like It Hot, where he dressed up like a woman to escape from Chicago mobsters, Jack Lemmon turns in some of the most exquisite comedy performing you'll ever see. He joins up with an all-girl orchestra and finds himself sharing an upper berth, lucky man, with Marilyn Monroe.
I'm not crowding you, am I?
No, it's nice and cozy.
When I was a little girl on cold nights like this, I used to crawl into bed with my sister. We'd cuddle up under the covers and pretend we were lost in a dark cave and were trying to find our way out.
Very interesting.
Anything wrong?
No. Not a thing.
The poor thing, you're trembling all over.
Ridiculous.
Your head's hot.
Ridiculous.
You've got cold feet.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Here, let me warm you up a little. There. Isn't that better?
Yes, I'm a girl. I'm a girl.
What'd you say?
I'm a very sick girl.
Oh, I better go before I catch something.
I'm not that sick.
I've got very low resistance.
Oh, well, sugar. If you feel that you're coming down with something, my dear, the best thing in the world is a shot of whiskey.
You got some?
I don't want to get it. Don't move.
Realizing or seeing on the monitor that it was that scene, I remember back, that's the only scene in Some Like It Hot that was ever done in one. In other words, in the first take, that was printed.
Really?
And used. Marilyn had a sort of built-in alarm clock. She would stop scenes very often. In other words, Billy Wilder, the writer-director, would not necessarily say cut. Very often, she would just stop in the middle of the scene that seemed to be going very well and just say, "I'm sorry." And she'd shake her hands to calm down and relax. Something inside of her was not satisfied. It just didn't seem to be flowing for her.
Right.
Although the result to the other actors and to Billy and so forth seemed all right. So you never knew. And it was not temperament or anything. It might go on for 20 or 30 takes sometimes. So Billy, early on, warned Tony Curtis and I and said, "Look, fellas, you better be very, very ready on every scene, because if she does happen to get it right and get hot, and it's terrific, I'm going to be very tempted to print it, whether or not you feel that it was great for you." We never rehearsed the scene because Marilyn was a little bit late, etc. So that was really the first run-through. I had only gone through it sort of in discussing it with Billy. I had run the lines with somebody else, etc. But that was it. That was the first take and the first rehearsal, first everything. And she just went sailing right through it. I came out, it was cut as I came through the curtains, you know, to look, and then we cut it to another angle, and that was it. And Billy was flabbergasted. I didn't know until the next day if I'd even gotten the right words out or anything else.
Is that right?
There was no nothing. We just did it. We winged it, in a sense, but Marilyn was dead on.
I also heard that the studio hired a female impersonator from Europe to teach you a Tony
I got
Curtis.
him out of the way quick.
You did?
He
What
quit.
happened?
I've forgotten his name. He was the foremost female impersonator in Europe. He was a genius at it.
Yeah.
And at the end of about 3, he wouldn't fly. He had a fear of flying. And he came all the way over on a boat from Europe. And Billy got him to the studio. He worked for 3 days with Tony and I, and then he went to Billy. He didn't say a word to me or to Tony, and we came in the next day, and he was gone. This, of course, was pre-production. And Billy was in hysterics. He laughed, and I said, "What happened?" And he says, "Well, I'll tell you the truth." He said, at the end of the 3 days, he came to me, and he said that Tony was wonderful, but that Lemmon, totally impossible. And he got on a boat, and he left. The thing was that he, without realizing it, was so carried away with his art of impersonating women that he wanted us to be perfect. Well, that was totally self-defeating to me, especially in my character. It was okay for Tony to be better at it, but not the klutz. I mean, if I started really walking like a woman and did it beautifully, not only is it not funny, it just isn't real. He wouldn't be able to do it, you see. So I deliberately wasn't doing the things quite good enough that he was doing, and he left.
Which made it all the funnier. It is said that you portrayed or found out that you were portraying some of your mother, Mildred, in Daphne?
I didn't know it. We worked for days on the makeup and the general overall, the physical demeanor of the characters, Coney and I with Billy. And it was almost a week, I think, finally. Both of us side by side for hours every day with two different makeup men. Once I had gotten it all, and Billy approved, and Tony tested it by bringing us into the ladies' room on the Sam Goldwyn lot. He really did. And we sat out in the outside part there, you know, where they make up and all of this and that. Other women from other films and everything kept going in and out, and nobody batted an eyeball. And so Tony brought me back, said, "That's it," you know, and Billy agreed. Billy Wilder. But I didn't know for about 2 weeks until my mother visited the set, and we had a shot taken side by side, both of us grinning. And I've still got it hanging in my office. We were like twins. And I didn't realize that that's what I was doing.
Hi, Jerry. Everything under control?
Have I got things to tell you?
What happened?
I'm engaged.
Congratulations. Who's the lucky girl?
I am.
What?
Osgood proposed to me. We're planning a June wedding.
What are you talking about? You can't marry Osgood.
You think he's too old for me?
Jerry, you can't be serious.
Why not? He keeps marrying girls all the time.
But you're not a girl, you're a guy. And why would a guy want to marry a guy?
Security.
Jerry, you better lie down. You're not well.
Will you stop treating me like a child? I'm not stupid. I know there's a problem.
I'll say there is.
His mother. We need her approval. But I'm not worried because I don't smoke.
What incredible timing. You know, I think that scene is one of my favorites in Jack Lemmon's entire career. Stay with us. Jack Lemmon's inventiveness is not confined to slapstick or farce. The Apartment, for instance, is a much more sophisticated comedy. Let's take a look at a scene where he's called on the carpet by his boss, played by Fred McMurray. Take a look at the exquisite detail work Jack does to create this awful head cold.
There's a certain key floating around this office, from Kirkaby to Vanderhoff to Eichelberger to Dobish. It's the key to a certain apartment. And you know who that apartment belongs to?
Who?
Loyal, resourceful, cooperative C.C. Baxter.
Oh.
Are you going to deny it?
No. How could it deny? If you just let me explain.
You'd better.
Well, about a year ago, I was going to night school. I was taking this course in advanced accounting. One of the guys in our department, this is Jersey, had to go to a banquet at the Biltmore. His wife was beating him in town. He needed some place to change into a tuxedo, so I gave him the key. And word must have gotten out, because the next thing I knew, all sorts of guys are suddenly going to banquets. When you give the key to one guy, you can't say no to another. The whole thing got out of hand. And, pardon me.
Baxter, an insurance company is founded on public trust. Any employee who conducts himself in a manner unbecoming... How many charter members are there in this little club?
Well, just those four. Out of a total of 31,259. So actually, we can be very proud of our personnel, percentage-wise.
That's not the point, Baxter.
Oh.
4 rotten apples in a barrel, no matter how large the barrel. You realize if this ever leaked out...
It won't. Believe me, it never again. Nobody is going to use my apartment from now on.
You know, it's funny, I can't get this out of my mind. In seeing that again, of course, that was shot right after, we're going back 20-something years. It was right after Some Like It Hot. But in seeing it again, that particular clip, I remember, and it's a good story about actors and directors. I remember what happened with the point where I said, "It won't." You know, he says, if this word ever got out, and I say, "It won't." And having a cold, obviously, I squeezed the nose spray bottle, and this stream goes across, which Fred did brilliantly. He never knew this was going to happen, is what I'm getting at. Nor did Billy. And this stream shot across, and Fred just merely looked at it and looked around and looked back at me instead of doing a big take. It would have been no good if it was done big, or if I did a huge take afterwards. I just sort of, again, he's frustrated. He did something wrong. You keep piling these little things on that could happen. That was worked out in rehearsal, but prior to that, having worked with Billy before, I knew as the eager young actor that whenever I had an idea in working at home or in rehearsing, in other words, of something to do in a scene, I would eagerly run to Billy and say, Billy, I've got a terrific idea in this scene, and so forth. And Billy would say, stop. Don't tell me. Show me. Do it, but don't tell me. So I was in my dressing room just prior to shooting. It didn't occur to me until just before. And I was rehearsing with a bottle of nose spray. You know, I wasn't obviously pouring this stuff into my nose, but I would try to figure out places where I could do it. I felt that that was important to have worked that out so that I would not clutter the scene up with too much business. I didn't want to do it in rehearsal, as I was afraid Billy was going to say too much, and I was dying to at least have it on film so we could see it, even if it was an outtake. And I didn't say boo until about the third or fourth take, as the scene got better. And everything was right, and I said, okay, do it this time. The scene felt like it was going well, and I did it, and Fred was just so, he just gave it a little look and came back, and we just kept right on going. And that was a marvelous thing that I remembered, and I do it with other directors very often. Instead of telling them I want to do something, I'll wait at least until a rehearsal, sometimes a take, because you never know.
Yeah.
And you could lose something that's very good, and if it's no good, you're doing it, and you're going to see it anyway. But it's worth a shot, in other words.
In this case, it certainly was.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a funny scene.
Yeah, it did work.
How did you create the cold? I know through the first third of the film you've got this awful cold, and I have to tell you, I can feel it in my sinuses and my nose and my throat.
I looked for the result. I wanted to hear a sound that I could legitimately do. And I did it by closing off the sinuses. And it was fine, but in longer takes, it would make me sick. I'd start to gag. You know, the old dry heaves, as we say.
So you're really
for doing it. In a way, it's closing everything off up here, which you could do, and pushing the tongue back at times when you close off. But it really does make you gag after a while.
Sure. For a long time, movie audiences knew your work in comedies, and then suddenly we saw a whole new dimension in Days of Wine and Roses. Very serious stuff, and yet you came at it from a comic point of view. When
Blake Edwards directed, and one of the problems we had with Wine and Roses was that Blake had always directed comedies, written and directed only comedies. I was known only as an actor in comedies up to that point. And the studios kept saying, you people are crazy. It's laugh, clown, laugh. Why is it that everybody in comedy always wants to do Hamlet, blah, 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 blah. They also felt it was downbeat and that the kids wouldn't like it and so forth. Anyhow, we finally got it made, but Blake and I were very well aware, as was Marty Manulis, who produced it, that if we could legitimately inject comedy, and we did whenever we could, we made up things as we were going along. At one point, he comes back blind drunk, very late, to his wife and new little child, who was only months old. And instead of walking or staggering into the lobby, first I paid the cab by leaning back in the rear window, and there was no cab driver. And, oh, there he is, etc. And so we did that. I walked into a plate glass mirror. I picked flowers for her because I already felt guilty. But the elevator door closed on them and cut them all off, and I didn't know it until I held them up and then wondered what the hell had happened to them. Whenever we could, we put comedy into it. And fortunately, it did work. And I'm a firm believer in it, as long as it's legitimate. Things are terribly funny, but it is so tragic. You know, the state of being drunk and being unable to control is horrible. I mean, the complete lack of dignity, when you strip dignity from a human being, when you put him into an alcoholic state where he loses control, that is the most horrible thing that can happen to a human being, when we lose control.
There's a scene in Days of Wine and Roses where if you didn't lose control, you certainly gave the best indication of it I've ever seen. And that's in your father-in-law's greenhouse, and you've hidden a bottle of booze there, you're drunk out of your mind, and you have to find it. study with an actor.
Jesus, I tell you the truth, I can't see that scene without getting... You're right. You're almost right about losing it. That's ad-libbed, that whole scene, in the sense that once he starts going berserk after trying to count and remember where the bottle, and then when the panic sets in, the only preparation I had really was to try to be simple. We did that scene. It took all day. And when I went home, I was exhausted physically and emotionally, but I felt wonderful. I knew that it was good work. Everybody was thrilled and so forth. When I came on the set the next day, it was like a funeral. And I said, what's with everybody? And Blake looked up at me. He said, the film was ruined in the lab. And I had to do it all over. I will never know if what we saw was as good as what I did the day, but I'll never know.
Well, I just can't imagine it could be any better. That's the kind of acting you remember all your life. We'll be back in a moment. Jack Lemmon continues to take risks as an actor. He won an Oscar for Save the Tiger, where he played a middle-aged businessman whose life was falling apart. In this scene of incredible vulnerability with co-star Laurie Heineman, he tells us just what's missing from his life.
I want that girl in a cold porter's home. I want to see Lena Horne at the Cotton Club. Hear Billie Holiday sing fine and mellow. Walk in that kind of rain that never washes the perfume away. I want to be alone with something. Anything. Just an idea. Dog, a cat. Anything. Something.
That's a lot of Jack Lemmon we're seeing there.
Yeah, the most singularly important thing about acting, I think, and directing too, and writing, whatever, in any of the creative or interpretive arts, if you are going to excel, you have to reach the point, in this case, acting, because that's all I know too much about, I guess, but where you can, to the greatest extent possible, be unafraid, or to control that fear of exposing, of taking risks. Rosalind Russell once put it quite beautifully when she was addressing a bunch of young girls that were would-be actresses in a college or university or school or whatever, and especially coming from a woman. She said, hypothetically, you must reach the point where you are willing and able to stand up in front of an audience stark naked and turn around very slowly, with the image of a girl having to do that, you know. Now, she was using she didn't mean literally, but inside, you have to be willing to expose and not be ashamed, or to say, I know it's the character, but it's really me, and I don't wish to be seen behaving this way. The hell with that. It really gets down to what an actor's basic function is, and that is only one thing. And if you ever let anything cover it up or get in the way of it, then you are dodging the bullets. An actor is only there for one reason, at any moment on a stage or in front of a camera, same thing. And that is, in his behavior, to be trying to raise the level of dramatic or comedic conflict to the highest level possible while carrying out the author's intent.
You want to take a shot at the definition of acting?
George Burns, not Olivier, not Gielgud, not Richardson, not Marlon, not me, not anybody, gave the closest definition, or I think most accurate, of acting ever given that I know of. He was sitting in a restaurant almost a year ago now, right next to us at the next table, and we were chatting back and forth at times. And at one point, fortunately, there was one of those God-given silences where all the 6 people at our table, nobody was speaking. And George's voice, loud and clear, suddenly came from the next table. I cannot imitate his voice, but he said, I'll tell you the most important thing about acting. and that's honesty. If you can fake that, you've got it made. Well, it is the best definition of acting I have ever heard. Acting has nothing to do with honesty. Dramatic honesty has nothing to do with reality. But it must seem like it. If you can fake it well enough and make that audience believe it, you're a hell of an actor.
And Jack Lemmon certainly can do that. He proved it again in Missing, a devastating search for a son in the middle of a South American revolution. In this scene with Robert Hitt, he learns at last that his son has been dead for months. Watch carefully Jack's reaction to this horrible news. It's so simple.
He thinks your son was executed in the National Stadium on September 19th.
That was nearly a month ago. Could I, speak to your friend or his contact?
No, I'm afraid not. These are very dangerous.
Go anywhere, in any way. You can tie my hands, you can blindfold me, you can...
I'm sorry. I am sorry, but I can't do that.
Just give me a name. Please.
In this scene, I mean, you know, as we say, receiving this news of this terribly tragic dimension, and your reaction is so simple. Where did you learn to do something like that?
I don't know. I just felt that this character would not be the obvious one who would say, you've got to let me speak to him. Let me see him, and start chewing the scenery. I don't mean that that would be bad. It is a legitimate way to play it. He could behave that way. I just did not see the character doing that. He had spent a lifetime devoted to a certain code of behavior, which is extremely honorable. This man could not tell a lie, for instance. And I'll tell you something, Ed Horman himself could not do it. Yeah, I was very pleased once I met him at the very end of the film, that my feeling of Ed Horman in the broad strokes of his character and his makeup, his personality, was on. And I was very pleased about that. In thinking about the character, I immediately wanted to do one thing, and that was put him in a straitjacket. That was the image. And I said, when you sit, don't play like you're literally in a straitjacket, but behave like it. I would sit, or even when it was below the camera, very often, in other words, instead of sitting like this, where my legs are open and relaxed and so forth and down, I would have them even together. My hands in my lap under a table even might be just like this, or they might be like this. I kept him confined so that everything was inside. And nothing was being, there were gestures like that, or a lot of facial movement, which is very difficult for me, because I not only have an awful lot of nervous energy, but I tend to do that. I tend to use my face and my body a lot.
And that's why the straitjacket.
Yeah, for me, yes. So that when certain scenes would come, and he did allow himself to let it out, to regurgitate what the horror and the feelings that he really had, then it would mean more, you see. I wore a hat whenever possible all the way through it with that little brim, and I always made sure, if possible, that it was dead straight across. And I didn't realize that it was part of my preparation. And it was a crutch. It did. It just put a lid on him, excuse me, and helped me immeasurably. When I didn't wear it, it was always within a few feet of me. I think it was just automatic with Ed. He does not wear a hat himself. I've gotten to know Ed, and I love and respect him a great deal. But it helped me, the actor. It's a healthy crutch.
Have you ever been afraid you'd fail?
Well, there's a lot of traps. Money, this, that, or whatever. I have always... I think the best thing that ever happened to me was all of the stuff that I did before I ever did a film. Because the whole nature of, quote, Hollywood, unquote, is to ballyhoo you up. Our star system, etc., you see. I've conducted my career mostly by doing parts that I wanted to do. Because as the actor, I was excited. I felt, you haven't really played that part, or I saw a way to play it that excited me, Jack Lemmon, the actor, to want to do that part. And coupled, of course, with the respect for the material and the other people I was going to work with, the directors, fellow actors, etc. Not because it was going to be a commercial hit, or you could end up just 5 years from now, hey, whatever happened to Jack Lemmon? You know? It won't work. Yeah. The films that I am most proud of, very often in the past, have been films that nobody wanted to do. But they've gotten made, starting back with Wine and Roses. Certainly Wine and Roses, Missing, Save the Tiger, China Syndrome, etc. Those are films that nobody would touch. You can make an awful lot more money, frankly, once you get into a position of being the quote star, etc., than I have made. But I would have done other things, and I would not be as proud of being involved in certain things that I have.
Jack Lemmon, I was fortunate enough to be at the sneak preview of the very first movie you ever made. I love the work that I saw then, and I love the work that I see now. Thank you so much for telling us how you do it.
Thank you, Gordon. I enjoyed it. I really did. Thank you.
And so did I. Until next time, this is Gordon Hunt for Starring the Actors.